My name is Peter Manta. I am our global AI practice leader at Informatica, which means I had a nice quiet life 5-6 years ago, focusing on the correlation between data management and data science, predictive analytics. Then, of course, the world blows up, and now my life isn't as quiet anymore. But more importantly, you want to hear from our panelists. So we'll go down, just a brief intro if y'all don't mind.
Thank you. Hello, everyone. My name is Ehrar Jameel, and I've spent the last 20 plus years in all spectrums of data, be it data governance, master data management, data engineering, analytics, and more recently in the last few years with AI and machine learning. And currently, I'm the head of data analytics and AI, and I work on modernizing data, building data platforms, governance of data, and also deploying AI agents or deploying AI at scale to either increase productivity, revenue, operational stability, and all of that. So happy to be here.
Yes. And my name is Rosalia Tungaraza. I work for Baptist Health South Florida, which is one of the largest hospitals in southern part of Florida. My background is in computer science and engineering. I've been doing AI for over 15 years now, if you count grad school. And after I've worked in the space of AI in multiple industries, from media, now healthcare, architectural products. And at Baptist Health, I lead our AI initiative, everything that has to do with AI, from AI governance to building AI solutions, all sorts of solutions, predictive AI, generative AI, and now we're jumping into the space of agentic AI. I have a team of engineers, DevOps, researchers, because we also do research, clinical research in the space of AI and beyond. Yeah, I'm very excited to be here and to have this conversation.
Hello, everyone. I'm Chirag Agrawal. I lead data science team at Novelis. I have more than 15 years of experience in data. I started my career more as an using statistics, and then slowly, as the term was coined, data science term was coined, I was slowly started getting. So I used to do a lot of linear regression in the beginning, and then slowly started as more models started coming in, I've started using all the models and then graduated into more kind of a data science role. And so I have a deep experience in building models around time series forecasting, computer vision models, also simulation. So currently at Novelis, we do a lot of time series forecasting, for example, computer vision, and a bit of generative AI as well. So all of that we have been doing there. A little bit about the company. My company is into aluminum recycling and rolling. It's one of the largest rolling company in the world, and with roughly $17-18 billion in revenue. The main end product is aluminum foil or sheet, and that goes into multiple customer segments. The most important one is canned beverage cans. So anytime you're drinking, soda, beer, the cans that you're using or you're holding in your hand, the chances are it's been processed by Novelis. Anytime you're drinking coffee, you're making using Nespresso pods, coffee pods. The aluminum goes or processed by Novelis. Then it's one of the biggest company in terms of recycling. Whatever we produce, we sell in a year. 64% of that is recycled aluminum. So that's a bit about the company and myself.
Thank you. And you've hit two things that make me extra happy. One is by education, I was a statistician. Now, when I graduated, you couldn't get a job in statistics other than going out to be an actuary. But now math nerds are back in fashion. So people say, oh, we've been doing AI for the last few years. Well, AI has been around for 60 years.
I do hold a bunch of certificates in actuary as well, because that time, the entire data started with that, statistics, econometrics, actuary, and all that.
Time series and stochastic processes and all those good things. The second is you said, talked about coffee. I nerded out and data science up some coffee. So it turns out the distribution of the coffee grind is the most important thing in the flavor of the coffee. You want to have an even, anyway, that's a different topic. We'll get into something a little more relevant, other than my my coffee nerd. Okay, Chirag, I think we'll start with you. When we talk about AI-ready data, and again, I think it's funny because the last few years, right, everyone wants to talk about which models do you use, and but it's the old problem, the garbage in, garbage out, right? The AI is only as good as the data we put into it. So that's the focus we're going to take throughout the discussion today, really. So when we talk about AI-ready data, do you have specific attributes or capabilities that you think that are most important in your processing and your kind of thinking about AI?
Happy to start on that. So, like, I always give this analogy in my company as well. Like, you have a chef in the kitchen, and your meal would be as good as how the chef knows about the kitchen, right? Like, what kind of ingredients are there. So, data is your ingredients, and thus the chef knows, like, where you have sourced your ingredient, like your tomatoes, right? Is it like sourced from California? Is it sourced from Mexico? Because the taste is different. And is there labeling done there about all the ingredients which are sitting there in the kitchen, right? So data is exactly like that. Your models, whether it's like your data science team building in-house models or your machine learning engineers building in-house models, they need all these ingredients as clean as possible. So when we talk about the data, right, data quality, like, you've been hearing this term all along, right? Like garbage in, garbage out, because if your data quality is wrong or it's bad, you're not going to get the outcome that you're looking for, right? So that's super important. Now, how do you get to that data quality, right? There are a bunch of matrices, like, for example, data governance is one of the big name that we've been hearing last 3-4 years, because like 5 years down the line, maybe 10 years down the line, like everyone jumped with this data science modeling, like, okay, AI is there. Everyone started doing a lot of POCs and then realized that, the data quality is bad, right? The models are not getting adopted. They're not getting the right results from the model. So, and then realize that, okay, the data quality is bad, and then how do we solve the data quality issue, or the data, how do we fix the data? So the first one was, like, you have to have the data governance team, right? You want to make sure that you have the right same definition of the data, right? You don't want to have the different column names, different cell names, or different cell values. One place you're calling United States, another place you're calling it USA, and then your data is not matching. So you want to make sure that in an organization level, your data is harmonized, it is reliable, it's trustworthy, people trust that data. So the more trust is there in the data, the better it is. So that's just on the quality perspective. Then to fix that quality, you need to have the data governance. And then it comes the security, which has become a very important pillar in last, I would say, 3-4 years. Because if you are not, like, what kind of data you have, like, does your data have PII? If it's there, then you need to want to, like, mask your data. You want to encrypt that data before using it. And if you're not doing that, maybe you'll not get a get go, or you'll not get approval from your executive to basically deploy those models, right? So you want to make sure that you have the governance in place, you have the security in place, you have the quality in place. Now, that is something that I was talking about very generally about the data science AI models. But when we talk about, let's say, agentic AI, right, that's a step ahead. So earlier, there was a human in the loop who was building the model. Now there is an agent where there is no human. So now if you give a bad data to your agent, it'll just freak out. Like, it'll just don't know what to do. So it becomes even more important, right? Discoverability, like half the time in the organization, it's very hard. Like, for example, my company is very big. It's a very big manufacturing company. I don't know what all kind of data is sitting there, right? Because even I'm like leading their AI team there, but we have like tons of data there. I don't know. So discoverability is one of the bigger, very, very important factor, that if you want your machines or your chatbots to work, you need to have a very clear definition of your data so that your agents can understand that. You need to tell your agents that what all kind of data is there, what data is available, where is it there. You should have a nice semantic layer so that your agents understand your data, right? So these are some of the points which are like very, very relevant, whether you're doing machine learning AI using data scientists or ML engineers, or you're moving a step ahead with the agent in the perspective.
Yeah, and I think it's coming even more important with MCP. You have to be able to describe all these different agents that are out there so they know how to choose tools. Any other commentary on follow-up on that?
Yeah, I mean, I can add one more thing. You really articulated it very well. One more that I would add is data availability, because one of the things that we find when we build AI models, whether it's the more recent ones, agentic AI, or your traditional predictive Gen AI standard things, um, you want to make sure that the data that you're using for training is actually available when you're in production. So it's very important to make sure that we're available and accessible. So especially with the agents, because they do self-discovery, it needs to be accessible. But even if you're just doing traditional AI, you can't have data that's changing or data that's incomplete. Or that's completed during training because you fielded it from different locations. And then when it comes to production, because it was so manual, the process of putting together your data, now it's all of a sudden not available and you might not even have known it. So it's in that sense, it's again back to data quality, but that becomes a harder in production.
No, completely agree with both of you. And Chirag, very good analogy about the kitchen, right? It's almost perfectly said. Just like to add just a couple of points to that, right? Again, data, it has to be trusted. The context has to be right. I think in the whole the agentic AI space, they say context is the king, right? So the context has to be right. We can do that multiple ways. Define the right semantic structure to it, or maybe knowledge graphs and all that. So once you have that, that's good. And again, you spoke about consumable, right? It has to be discoverable by the metadata and consumable through APIs and all that, and make sure that it's available. Yeah, but very good points.
So I think what I heard was three key pillars. One is authoritative. We have to be able to trust the data. Second is comprehensive. We have to be able to get to all the data we need for these models. And actually, I was reading something recently about a study for using AI to predict oncology, so cancer studies. Right? And they said that they were studying these broad data sets, but some electronic health records were difficult to get and difficult to process. So they skipped them, which of course skewed the model. If you're leaving out important data because it's hard to get at, your model is going to be skewed. And then the third one is around treating data responsibly. And I think that's getting more and more important lately. I read another story recently. The New York Times, right? They had people the models are going behind a New York Times paywall, and they're indexing these articles. So people were avoiding the paywall to read articles. Right? So the New York Times sued OpenAI, and they said, well, you can't do that. So you're giving access to our proprietary information. It went to the courts, and the court said, okay, OpenAI, you need to, if a person deletes their history, their conversation history, you still need to preserve it in case we need to come back and analyze this later and see if a person was trying to skirt paywalls and things. But in the EU AI Act, one of the things is they say if a user deletes data, you have to delete it. Right? So OpenAI is now saying, well, the EU AI Act says you have to delete this data. You're telling us we have to keep it. What should we do? We're stuck. Right? So I think we're going to be seeing more and more of those kinds of treating data responsibly situations coming up soon. Anyway, thank you. That was good. I think next, we'll just go in order down our seating chart here. So Rosalia, question for you. How do you design governance frameworks that enable autonomy for agents? Kind of piggybacking on Chirag's comment around agents, where I think you're right, it's even more important as we move into this agentic world where there's no human in the loop. So how do you design these governance frameworks while kind of ensuring compliance and ethics and non-bias and all that sort of thing?
Yeah, so for me, when I think about that, I really think the way you put your governance framework is an extension of what we used to do already before agents became a big deal, right? Even with just AI, there are things you need to have in place. One, you need to make sure that you have a committee that can actually go over the kind of AI that's being done in the business, to make sure that one, you align with the business goals, two, you have policies in place that everybody abides to, and that that might be okay for this business, but may not be okay for another business, but you have agreed on this is how we are going to do business as usual with AI. And then, of course, you have the standard things that you have to have for AI governance, which is, when you're developing AI, right, proper leaving audit trails along the way, like documents you have to collect, for instance, like you're saying, garbage in, garbage out. So tell us what input went into the solution, right? Same thing with agents. I mean, what are the things that this agent is going to have permission to have access to? What data can they touch? What data can they not touch? That's all part of AI governance, right? And of course, you get to that once you know what the purpose of the agent is. And even with that, what should we build that agent, or should we build that agentic system? That comes back to your counsel, right? They need to look through it, review it, approve it, and then we're doing that agentic system. And then, of course, as you come to developing, so, yes, what data can they touch? What APIs can they go have access to? What security constraints do you need to put in place to make sure that, because at that point, an agent is really a digital employee. I mean, it does depend on the level of the agent, but if you're talking about truly autonomous agents, you have another employee in the business. This one happens to be digital. And can destroy things, right? Because with humans, you can kind of think, well, let me not be too bad about that, but you gotta give it a bit more guardrails, right? And so, how do you set those guardrails? Again, this is where your business policies set forth by this council come in place. But then, even with that, you go back to our standard AI governance approaches, which is you need monitoring. So this thing is in production. Now what? You can't just let it be in production and be like, oh, I built this fantastic AI solution, let's go use it. No, we need to know its performance. We need to know when it's misbehaving, right? We need to know any changes in the data that will cause it not to perform the way that it's expected to perform. And then at the same time, you also want governance around business value and ROI, right? We don't just want to build things. Well, I mean, it's fun as a data scientist. I love building things, right? But at the end of the day, it's a business, You need to provide value. So does this tool or does this system that you've built still provide the value that you set out to get out of building it? So that also needs to be monitored and governed. So those would be my points.
One quick follow-up. When you see the model misbehaving, right, a lot of people, I think, are tempted to blame the model. So you have model drift, say, oh, the model's wrong. Do you see that happening instead of people going back and looking at the data they're using to train the model? Or are they kind of looking in the data first?
You do both, right? So when you see, and then that's where monitoring comes in, right? So if you have good tools to monitor your model, whether it's an agentic system or just your predictive AI or generative AI, you should be able to see that maybe the data is, when you monitor models, you monitor data changes. There's the data that goes into the AI to do, say, predictions, but you also monitor things like just the services that have, for instance, how many times does it do the predictions? How many times does data get packages don't arrive to the model, right? All those things that you're monitoring. Then you're also monitoring performance. If it's just the predictive model, you want to monitor, well, are the metrics that you are getting, are they the same or very similar that you used to see in training compared to when you're now in production and say maybe months into production? Same thing with agents, when we're still developing those monitoring metrics, some are already in place. You want to make sure, for instance, with GenAI, you want to make sure that that tool is not hallucinating. And there are a lot of metrics now. But with agents, we're developing them. But yeah, you want to make sure that, having a place where you can go and see those values, see them change, you can preemptively now do the troubleshooting. It could be data, but it could just also be some other things along the way.
AI observability is becoming a new muscle we're exercising.
Yes.
Any other comments on the AI governance side?
Just want to double down on some of the points she said, and very great points, like especially around the ROI, because a lot of organization. I was listening to a couple of podcasts yesterday, and then they were talking about the investment in especially last 2 quarters on AI is more than the consumer investment in the last 2 quarters. So all the companies are investing a huge amount in AI, and I think very soon companies are at the same time realizing. There was an MIT study recently wherein 95% of the companies are struggling to find the return on investment. So this is like one of the big topic which is in mind of most of the executives, CFOs, etc. And then then how do you basically go about that and make sure that that it is producing the value? So I guess the very important part is, as you mentioned, right? What is your business goal? What is your business strategy? Like what do you want to achieve, right? You don't want to do one itsy bitsy use cases here and there which is not providing the value. You want to align your AI strategy with your business strategy, and then pick up the main business problem that you have, and you want to solve that using AI, and that's when you'll start getting the value. So that was one. Observability is the second one, which is like you want to know how your AI agents, like how your LLMs are taking the decisions, right? At which scenario, what kind of data they're calling, what kind of answers they're giving, right? So as we go more from augmentation to autonomous, we want to make sure that we have a very strong observability in house in the system, so that we know that anytime there is a wrong decision that has been taken by the agent, we know why agent took the wrong decision, and then we rectify that. And then of course the third is how to solve the right business problem, because that's very important, because that connects back with the ROI. So start with what is the problem you want to solve versus want to use, like how do you want to solve. Go there a little bit later. First go with like what do you want to solve with AI.
No, very good points. I think they covered they covered almost everything. Just wanted to add, there are, like you said, there's a new muscle, right? So there are so many really good tools out there that really do the good job on overall AI assurance, AI governance, observability, and all of that. And what we also do with one of that is the cost analysis, right? We can set thresholds and say, okay, this agent can only consume this much and all that. And if it consumes more, then is it really giving us a benefit and stuff like that? So as a part of the ROI, we also do the cost benefit analysis.
Yeah, it's I see we're borrowing some things from data governance practices, like data lineage, right? So now we have AI lineage. It's important. So the model goes off the rails. What data sets would be used to train the model? So lineage is important for that sort of thing. So we're borrowing from data governance, but I think some people make the mistake of thinking that data governance and AI governance are synonymous, but they're obviously very different things.
Yeah.
Okay, next question. Or this one for you. What are the most impactful first steps from moving from raw data or messy data into a state where AI agents can operate efficiently? I think the point we've been making is these things are making decisions on their own. If the data is not trustworthy, who knows what decisions they're going to make? So what steps do you think are most important in getting this raw state into a state in which agents can trustfully use the data?
Thank you. And I think, especially this topic, we have been speaking about this topic since morning. And also Chirag, in his opening, he rightly mentioned about the quality of the data, the trust, and all of that. So I would say AI, it's based on trust, right? And then how much do you trust the data? It's extremely important. So then it comes down to the data governance and data ownership. So if the data is messy, you need somebody to fix that messy data. And without the right ownership, you don't know who is going to fix the data, right? So you establish very strong governance practices. You make sure that you identify who is the right data ownership, assign the data ownership, you assign data stewards, product owners, and to the data to make sure that the data is clean, is governed, is owned. And that is very key, very essential in getting the trust back in the data. So when you get the trust back in the data, you get the trust back in the AI that's using the data. So that's number one. Then number two, and here I'm talking about agents which are autonomous and which really do a function that an entire team would do, not the itsy bitsy agents that you also mentioned earlier. Then the second step is identify tying it back to the business value. Identify the business value, like what domains are you focusing on, and you don't have to boil the complete ocean. So identify for specific business value that you're trying to target, say for example, customer churn or something else, right? So what are the business domains that you have to now clean or focus on data quality and all of that, and make sure that you focus on those business domains, including your master data and all of that. So that's second one. And also the third thing is build refinement in your data pipelines, progressive refined data pipelines, right? So when I say that, the very common medallion architecture that we have, like the bronze layer, the silver layer, and the gold layer, and all that. Bronze layer, again, all of you know here, it's mostly where you bring in the raw data, and silver layer is standardized data, and the gold layer is where you actually have the semantic layer on top of it. You build the context on the gold layer. So when I'm talking about these layers because it's important in the context of only focusing on your business problem. And when you're focusing on your business problem, you can build layers. You can only build the goal layer for the business case that you're trying to solve, right? So that's the third step. And then you build context on your goal layer, and you also build context and availability. Speaking earlier about discovering the data through metadata, making it available through your APIs and all of that. And also your context, again, through your either your semantic layer or your knowledge graphs, you build that. And it's also not about just your custom agents, right? It's also every application now is coming up with their own agents, be it Salesforce, be it ServiceNow or Oracle EPM or anything of that sort, right? So the context becomes really important there, where you build a semantic layer where internally the agents may be interacting and doing small mundane tasks inside of those applications, but how do they now interact among themselves, where you build that orchestration layer, the context and everything is built where a customer churn or a canceled contract is same both in sales terminology and also in the finance terminology, right? So you build all of that, the orchestration layer, so that these different applications interact, the agents within those applications interact with each other and perform a task autonomously, right? And the last one, I think, Rosalie, you spoke really well about observability, building those feedback loops and all of that. So, the messy data to clean data where the agents can use, I think these are the 5 things. Just summarizing those 5. One is data governance and ownership. Second one is focusing on your domains. The third one is build refinement pipelines, the different layers. Fourth one would be availability and your context. And then the last one is observability and overall AI governance.
Do you see any rethinking of the medallion architecture? I've had some people say, well, instead of doing bronze and silver and gold, why don't we just take a chatbot and put it on top of the raw data as it sits? Which of course then says, well, we need to go and apply quality and governance to the raw data, because if the AI is sitting on top of that. So I'm not sure if it's a good idea or a bad idea yet. But I have seen people say, let's not go and implement this medallion architecture. Let's start rethinking of just put the AI on top of the data as it sits. Has there been any that sort of movement with you?
We are going with the medallion architecture that I spoke with. I think the concept of where let's just go on top of the raw layer and try to build on that comes from speed to AI, right? Where you really want to quickly do something. Again, that's why it is key to not boil the ocean, to only focus on the business problem. When you do that, then you can leverage those 3 layers and really work out the semantic layer on the gold layer.
Yeah, I think it makes sense if you have like master data management in place and you use that as the trusted source. Anyway, any other comments on kind of that topic?
So I'm of the same opinion that if you, again, the same concept we had, garbage in, garbage out, if you put an agent on top of raw data with very minimal definition, I guess depending on the use case, it might be a good idea, but I'm more of the thought of curate your data, give your agent the data that it needs to do the job the best that it can, because you're gonna get better performance, rather than asking it to go around in circles to come up with a bunch of things. You may find yourself in sort of like a place where you get information, it's not performing optimal. whereas it could have performed much better if you had actually, gone ahead and curated your data. Now I'm informed by sort of like, the traditional AIs that we have done and sort of the experiences that I've had with building AI solutions. The better your data and the more straightforward and logical it is, the better the performance of the resulting solution. So I'm taking that, but we have not tried to just slap an agent on raw data and see what it does.
Yeah.
I would just like to add, Jamil said, is the concept of data marts, wherein you like. I'm coming back to restaurant or food because I'm a big foodie. Um, so when you go to a restaurant, right, you go and order a dish. Do you get to go into the kitchen and see how they're cooking it? You don't, right? You just order it, and after maybe like 15 minutes or so, you get your dish, right? It's the same thing here, right? Uh, you might have different data sources sitting there, right? You have SAP, you have Oracle, you have MES, you have, right, you have data lake. So now how do you make sure that this is all discoverable and also available for your agents to consume, like to use that data? And so that, coming back to that, discoverability is very important, as you mentioned, right? Like how can we put an agent on top of them to make sure that we don't have these different medallion layers, and absolutely we can reach there. When do we reach there? That's the, I think, question, because right now as a human we don't know what all kind of data is there. The data is not labeled. We don't know whether the data is good quality, bad quality data. So as a human we are not sure, and that's where we are creating those master data management to make sure that yes, this is trustable data, and then maybe we can expose that initially to the AI agents to start using that data, and then slowly, as we have more discovery of the data, then start pushing that towards AI agents. And agents are great. Like they can remove those data silos, and which is another big problem, because you have hundreds of thousands of different data sets sitting there, and agents can help you to get the data as you need it, versus like boiling the ocean, wherein like push all the data to the data lake, curate that data, save that data, spend a lot of resources in that, and then maybe you just use maybe 5% of that data. So you don't want to have to do that with the newer technology. So these are like some of the great examples which can probably use as we go forward in terms of like understanding the data.
Do you see new roles being created that didn't exist, AI governance stewards and things like that didn't exist before, to kind of support these governance workflows specific to AI?
We have created already some new roles. I mean, yeah, one with AI governance, right? I mean, we'd had data governance that was kind of standard, and you find it everywhere. But now we have a whole team that does just AI governance, and we are hiring people that focus on just monitoring the whole space of the different tasks in there. So yes, we have to do it, right? And I'm pretty sure we're gonna probably have roles about just people who man agents. I would imagine that, because things are changing, and what you need a human to do is also changing, right? And we might have to delete some roles that we don't need anymore. Well, augment them. Let's put it that way.
And policies for the agents too, right? The ethics, the policies, and all of that. So who manages them? Once in a company you have too many agents, almost like employees. So how do you make sure that you either shut down or retire an agent or fire an agent or whatever, right? So it's there will be interesting roles in the future.
In the models, when they hallucinate, they do so with confidence, right? So they will very confidently tell you the wrong answer. And so, it's easy for people to believe, but imagine if an agent is, if the model's hallucinating with confidence and the agent is just trusting it, then it's off and running doing who knows what. Okay, so let's move to the next question. And this is not for anybody in particular, just whoever feels like it would be interesting to comment on. Let's see. So how do you ensure data fueling AI agents is contextually relevant to the task at hand? This is still kind of piggybacking on our previous conversation. So the contextual relevance of the agent, right? If I ask, if I say, tell me about Watson, and I'm reading a book about Sherlock Holmes, it'll say, oh, Watson is Sherlock Holmes' assistant. But if I'm interested in IBM Watson, right, that's something completely different. So how do you think about making sure the agents are still being contextually relevant while without introducing bias, without introducing outdated data, et cetera. So any thoughts on kind of the contextual relevance of data as it applies to the agents?
I think as we are graduating with like more the recent LLMs, right? That hallucination problem, that contextualization problem has gone down, right? Like if you talk about the earlier GPT models, 3.5 or 3, we had a lot of hallucinations over there. But as we started going towards, let's say, 4.0 and 5 now, uh, the the companies like who are developing these LLM models, they are taking care of that. Now the second, so that's one which is like, where you don't have to, like, we don't, as a consumer, we don't have to do much over there. The second is what we can do to reduce that, to increase the contextualization, is like, call this concept of grounding, wherein provide much and much more and more information to your LLMs, to your chatbots, to your agents about your ecosystem, and what that's going to help you to basically LLM to understand your context more. And so when you are asking a question, they know that who you are and what you want, and based on that, it'll give you the answer. So I think it's more kind of like, how much more of your own data, your secret source that you are exposing to LLM. Now there's some other questions that come into this, like, okay, is it secure? Is it not secure? That's a different topic altogether. But in terms of contextualization, hallucination, these are some of the ways how we are trying to reduce that.
Feedback loops also help tremendously in grounding the data and making sure that we fix the context.
Yeah.
Same. I mean, for me, it's just give it the context. And I go back to also what data can it touch and what data can it not touch? Because if you give it too much, you might actually ruin it in terms of performance. So you want to make sure that you put guardrails in place for the agent to behave the way that you want it to, and you also steer it in the right direction. Again, it's all about context. And what things does it have access to? You don't want to have access to everything in a way that you can end up with a lawsuit.
So in summary, we don't want to go and give it so much access to data that it runs off and creates the next Skynet. We're not looking for that just yet. Oh. Okay. Another one, I think, when we're getting a little bit towards the end, but I think this one is a good, important question around scaling. Do you have any frameworks or patterns you've seen that help scale AI projects without losing reliability of those projects? How do we scale out the AI projects?
I mean, scaling is one of the problem that most of the companies are facing, as like, we see a great returns on the pilots or the POCs, but when we start scaling it to the most of our data, we start seeing that, okay, maybe this is not working, or that is not working, or maybe there's less confidence on the data. So scaling is one of the problem that a lot of companies are facing. The way to get around that is, again, coming back to that, what kind of problem. So it's not that you want to do the data governance on the entire company's data. You want to pick up what is your business priority, pick up that problem, clean that data, make sure that data is clean, it's trustworthy, it's reliable, and then from there you start that, okay, this is my business problem. So you have to be very laser sharp focus over there on the business problem, and then uh, a lot of consistency is required, a lot of pushback is required, a lot of adoption is required on scalability, because a lot of times your data, everything is good, your technology is good, but then you're not able to adopt that as well. So there are like a lot of components in the ecosystem that has to fall in place to start getting the return on investment, and also start getting scaling this. Now, some of the use cases you have to pick, for example, in my company, one of the use cases that we have picked up, and that's again very related to the strategy of the company, is around the safety. Now, in safety, what happens is we install cameras in the plant, and then we use that data to find out the violations done by the folks in the plant, and then what actions we can take to change their behavior so that it's a safer place. And now in this situation, we have realized that now we don't have to worry too much about the data, because we are producing the data. It's produced by the camera, right? So it's a trustworthy data. So now you have to, likewise, you have to find out what kind of use cases would work in your ecosystem, which is kind of attached to your core of the business. Second use case is around like simulation. We do a lot of simulation use cases, and again, because we have like a very complex supply chain, we want to understand like, oh, what are the what if analysis, what are the bottlenecks in the plants, etc. So these are some of the areas where you don't have to worry too much about the data, and you can quickly finish your project. So it's again like coming back to like selectivity. Like how do you select your problem, which is again connected to your business alignment, business goals, and then find out which where is the resistance in the ecosystem. Like is it around the data, then what do you do, what can you do to fix that around the data. So there's a lot of small pieces, challenges that will come, but you have to be very persistent, very focus, laser sharp focus, and then just push it through the end. So I think that's I guess I would like to add over here for the scaling.
I think also it's about how you approach the problem, right? And we earlier Jennifer was talking about almost 90% of the AI projects fail, they never make it to production, and so on and so on. So about a year ago, I was one of those 90% too, right? So because the way we approached the problem when we started was, hey, there's a nice bright and shiny object, go and do more towards an experimentation approach or a POC approach, rather than actually like a product mindset, like coming in and approaching it right, like a product that you can actually prove out and then scale it, right? So I think it's also based on the approach. Initially, when companies are starting out, they may get into this experimentation mode and do it haphazardly with not right planning, and then end up with not making it to production at all.
Yeah, it's funny. I've talked to people who said, we want to do something with AI. Well, what do you want to do? I said, I don't know. My CFO was playing golf with the CEO, and they read the Wall Street Journal. They said, do something AI. But they don't have a business problem that they're tying to it, so how can you back into the POCs and scale it out to an effective actual result?
Yeah, for us, it's really working with partners who have solved or who have experience in scaling AI, especially the type of AI that we want to build in our healthcare space with all the regulations and what have you that we have to deal with. And so we rely on them. I mean, it's a collaboration, but we rely on their expertise to augment what we are doing. We know what our business problems are that we want to solve, improve patient outcomes, cut costs, efficiency, reduce clinician burden and stuff like that. So we know our pain points, and we know where we want to apply AI. Now we have different vendors or different partners that help us with platform and what have you. So it's really leveraging the ones that have shown credibility in this space and that have shown also good returns. And then another thing is also leveraging business stakeholders as well, right? So we started with a central team that was building AI, and now we're branching out. So we're going to do it such that the central team is helping other folks across the business build AI, whether it's traditional or agentic. And so in that way, we can scale out as far as what use cases we develop and who develops them, because they're the domain experts. If we can empower them to build it themselves, while we as experts help them along the way, sort of enable them, then they can go much faster, can experiment much quicker. I mean, because with us, what we do is we try to experiment quickly so we can fail fast. So we don't want this idea where we cherry pick in the beginning. Sorry. Where we cherry pick in the beginning what we're going to go after and what we're not. We want to do a lot of experimentation, fail. We know we're going to fail, and we're going to fail a lot. But we want to make sure that now in that kind of strategy, at least out of 20 experiments or 20 use cases we build, maybe 2, 3 really good ones with good value and ROI, remain alive and go to production, right? So now we can do that even better and faster when we empower our business stakeholders. So people say in supply chain will have their own sort of small set of people that we will enable to build, and then HR, and then marketing, and our clinician, parts of the clinical space. So that way we can scale out the experimentation of AI use cases. But then when it comes to platform, we're definitely working very aggressively with our partners to make sure that, we glean from what they have, what they know, and then use it.
Do you find that that's creating our old friend, the shadow IT, problems with that? People out in the business creating their own shadow IT projects because they're ultimately owning the data, they're ultimately owning the AI application.
Yeah, so they don't own the data. Data is still owned sort of centrally, but we are going to, or we're setting up the data such that each of these spokes, it's like a hub and spoke mode. Each of the spokes will have sort of their own access to the data that they need. Again, that idea of curating it so that they get the relevant data rather than just giving them everything and go figure it out. But the team that manages data and what have you is still a centrally managed team. Same thing with AI, same situation. It's a central team, smaller, but central. And then that team enables those spokes to do what they need to do. So yeah, no, it's not going to be sort of shadow data or shadow AI kind of situation because the team also governs AI, right? So there will be visibility in terms of what's going on among the hubs. And in fact, the hubs will be learning, among the spokes. And the spokes will be learning from the hub what to do and what not to do. And there is a counselor, right? An AI governance, a data and AI governance counselor that actually does enterprise governing of both data and AI. So hopefully that doesn't turn out to be the case, but fingers crossed.
All goes back to governance.
If
always
governance is
goes
not
back to
built right,
governance.
that will be dangerous.
Yeah.
As all shadow AI across the company.
We've got just a few minutes left, so lightning round. We'll wrap up with this. So just briefly, if you could leave our audience, and thank you again all for joining, one piece of advice for data leaders today around how you get AI agents to move beyond just experimentation into the actual business. One statement for that, what might it be?
So I would say just pick one use case that is of high value to the business and then just prove it out end to end, solve it, get the ROI, and then that's how you basically have AI at the table, have a seat.
Perfect.
Mine is very similar. If I were to add to that, is involve your business stakeholders, right? So don't build it in silo over there, all the techies talking to each other, and then present it to the business at the end of the day. I think the best approach, my best approach, if I were to execute this, would be involve the business. Make sure that the pain point, or make sure that the solution you're trying to build fits one of the major pain points in the business, and you have your business stakeholders in agreement. Sorry. Yes, and that would be my takeaway.
Great points and similar points, but from the data governance and again, don't try to fix all the problem together, right? Don't try to fix all your data. Pick a problem, as Jameel said, pick a problem, identify the data you need around it, fix that first, build the data governance around that, solve that problem, create the curiosity around the executives, and then that will build the momentum. So it's like good use case, successful use case can have many further use cases.
So Field of Dreams was a really good movie, but we're not doing that here. It's not a build it and they will come. Okay, perfect. Well, that brings us to the end of our time. So again, thank everybody again for joining, and hopefully this was a little bit interesting and useful and informative. But thank you again, all mostly.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.